The storytelling of Sonic games is a divisive subject among fans, and in this video, we're gonna comb through the storytelling throughout the mainline games and try and find out what makes a Sonic story. Sonic the Hedgehog as a concept is very simple. You run and jump as fast as you can to defeat the evil Dr. Eggman. The first two Sonic games have simplistic enough storytelling to complement the gameplay, mostly using environmental storytelling throughout the levels. Each level in Sonic 1 becomes more industrial than the last, showing Eggman's expanding influence and pollution on the land. This accompanies what was at the time the general theme of the series, that being nature versus industry. Sonic 2 roughly follows the same pattern as the first game, with Sonic and Tails going through increasingly industrial stages until reaching the Death Egg. The last few levels are actually directly connected, with the end of Sky Chase being the beginning of Wing Fortress and the end of Wing Fortress leading to the Death Egg. The true endings of both of these games show Sonic reversing the effects of industrialism using the Chaos Emeralds, which show the initial mystique of their power. Now Sonic 3 is where the storyline starts to really ramp up with the visual and environmental storytelling. But before we get to Sonic 3, we need to talk about Sonic CD, which definitely ramps up the nature versus industrialism theme tenfold. The beautiful intro cutscenes show Sonic running through nature, rainbows literally sprouting from his feet, until he comes across the little planet chained to a mountain, once again showing Dr. Eggman interrupting the natural cycle of nature. This game is the first game to introduce a twist gimmick to the franchise, that being the time travel. Sonic uses the time stones and or signposts to reverse Eggman's actions in the past, therefore restoring nature in the future. Fan favorite character Amy Rose is also introduced in this game, starting the trend of adding a new character to the series with each subsequent entry. She becomes a sort of damsel in distress B-plot, where Sonic now needs to save both her and the planet from the clutches of the Doctor. Now using the power of the Sega CD, Sonic CD really expands the series' storytelling capabilities for the first time beyond what is said as manuals and the player's imagination filling the gaps. The few FMV cutscenes added to the game really give you a better grasp of the storyline that is being told to the player. But let's not get sidetracked and finally talk about Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which I believe is the best use of visual storytelling in the entire series. Right off the bat, we see Sonic landing from the true ending of Sonic 2, going to the location where the Death Egg landed, which happens to be Angel Island. He still has access to all the Chaos Emeralds, so he uses his super form, till he is shortly socked in the chin by Knuckles the Echidna, greatly establishing him as the game's secondary antagonist. The little cutscenes between each level both transition to the next level and show Knuckles just messing with the heroes for the love of the game. While the theme of increasing industrialization is still shown in both Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, the game also puts a greater emphasis on sharing the diverse locales that Angel Island has to offer. Now after a full game of getting trolled by Knuckles, we finally get to beat his ass in Hidden Palace Zone, which after the fight we see Dr. Eggman trying to steal the Master Emerald. The introduction of the Master Emerald in this game is very important because up until this point the Chaos Emeralds were seen as an all-powerful device that could reverse and change the situation for the better. And seeing that there's a higher authority of emeralds that controls the Chaos Emeralds both creates more intrigue and increases the scope of the Chaos Emerald's power. Now with the Doctor's betrayal, we see Knuckles switching sides to help our heroes, and all of this storytelling is understood entirely without dialogue, mostly because it's pretty simple to understand in the first place, but it still allows the player to piece together the personalities and behaviors of each character in the game through their animations, how they carry themselves, and through their actions. Now following the Genesis saga, Sonic was slightly lost in terms of storytelling since there were no main series games for stories to be told from. This would change with the developers at Sonic Team starting to make a new game meant to be an RPG for the Sega Saturn featuring the Sonic cast. While the development of this game would spill over to the next console and change into a 3D platformer, it's clear that the RPG story aspects were kept in the shift to Sonic Adventure. This game, being the first fully voiced story-focused game, has a lot to talk about. While the game still has themes of industrialism versus nature, there's more focus on Sonic himself as well as his friends, seeing as they all get their own sections of the story. Now up until this point I haven't really been talking about Sonic's role in all of these stories, and that was for good reason. Sonic isn't simply a vessel for the player to project on, quite the opposite in fact. While the typical video game character acts as a blank slate for the player to push themselves into, Sonic the Hedgehog is a static character. This is the type of character that doesn't change throughout the events of the story. The best way I could describe Sonic the Hedgehog is the events of the story don't happen to Sonic. Sonic happens to the events of the story. What happens throughout the game doesn't serve to develop Sonic as a character. As a matter of fact, Sonic ends up as the one sparking character development in others more often than not. And Sonic Adventure is the first game that truly explores this concept to its fullest potential. In Sonic Adventure, Tails and Amy's stories revolve around their dependency on Sonic, and they end with both characters having a new lease on life. Tails becomes his own hero, away from Sonic's shadow, and Amy learns to defend herself and stand up for what she believes is right, instead of waiting around for Sonic to solve her problems. Besides the general themes, both stories are more similar than you'd think. Both Tails and Amy are with Sonic for a part of their story before splitting off and solving their problems alone, which in Tails' case is disarming a nuke, and in Amy's case is saving a bird. Sonic and Knuckles' stories tie into the overarching plot, that being the collection of the Chaos Emeralds and formation of perfect chaos by the hand of Dr. Eggman. Knuckles' story focuses more on the world-building aspects, with expansion to the lore of the Echidna Clan, Master Emerald, and Chaos himself, while Sonic's story shows the events of Eggman's meddling with nature once again. The scale of Sonic Adventure's story is much larger thanks to the power of the Sega Dreamcast, so details that would formerly be left open to interpretation are just flat out shown to the player, like the perfect chaos mural in Lost World. Now before we move on to Sonic Adventure 2, we do need to talk about Big and Gamma's stories, which aren't necessarily relevant to the overarching plot, but serves to show that Sonic's world is alive, and it's not just Sonic and his friends that are going on adventures from time to time. Think about it, you get to play as a chill dude who just wants to fish with his frog, and one of the bad guy's faithful minions, who turns on him in the end. Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't played Sonic Adventure. I don't know why you're watching this. If you haven't, go do that. Go play Sonic Adventure. Once Chaos achieves its perfect form using the negativity of the emeralds, Sonic uses the positive energy, defeats it, and kinda just leaves the terrorized Station Square and ruined, which is like really funny, because Tails is like,
all's well that ends well, right?
While millions of people probably died, but that's besides the point. This once again expands on the mystique of the Chaos Emeralds by showing that the energy taken from the emeralds isn't universal. You can be positive and negative. Next is the game's sequel, which is much more linear in terms of story and therefore a little bit easier to talk about. Sonic once again has to defeat the evil Dr. Eggman, but his latest plot has much more realistic stakes, a new rival for Sonic, government spies, space conspiracies, and much more. Sonic Adventure 2 is one of the best stories in any Sonic game. So good in fact that both the adaptation in Sonic X as well as the third Sonic movie end up being the best parts of their respective series. In my opinion. This is an opinion. Don't get mad at me, it's an opinion. That's what I think. We see the average typical Sonic tropes in this game, like the rival turned hero and Chaos Emeralds being used by both good and evil, but it really feels like Sonic's team pulled out all the stops to tell the grandest adventure they could, knowing with the failing sales of the Dreamcast, the series' future was uncertain. We once again see Sonic's influence on the other characters, but this time it's indirect. The heroes are fresh from their arcs in their previous games, so Tails and Amy are more proactive and independent, both taking the chance to break Sonic out of his wrongful imprisonment. Amy also happens to be the reason behind Shadow's change of heart near the end of the game. Speaking of which, let's actually talk about Shadow, because he's the only character in this game to go through a complete story arc. He starts off completely against the world, wanting to destroy it because of the false memories implanted by Dr. Gerald Robotnik of Maria's wish. But throughout the game, his compassion shines through, showing evil isn't simply his nature. He learns to respect Sonic as an equal, but he only changes into a hero once Amy unlocks the memories hidden inside him of Maria's true wishes. Now, seeing as Sonic Adventure 2 is supposed to be Shadow's only game before Sonic Team backpedaled and resurrected him in Sonic Heroes, it's implied that all of Shadow's memories, implanted or not, were fake, and he never actually knew Dr. Gerald Robotnik's granddaughter Maria in the first place. However, with Shadow's resurrection, this plot thread would be quickly abandoned. Back to the topic of environmental storytelling, there is a bit of it on the arc with the strange replica Master Emerald Shrine in the Bio-Lizards arena, showing that Gerald Robotnik either had knowledge of Angel Island and the Master Emerald in the past, or was at least planning in some way to use the emeralds in tandem with the Bio-Lizard to do something. Shadow sacrificing himself after defeating the Bio-Lizard with Sonic neatly wraps up his character arc throughout the game, cementing him as a hero, and the ending is left open enough for the series to continue past Dreamcast's death, while still feeling like a send-off to the console and the series. Now, while the Adventure series was the natural evolution of the Genesis era storytelling, The 2000s era was a mixed bag in terms of progression with this formula that we're going with throughout the video. On one hand, you have games like Sonic 06 and Shadow the Hedgehog, which try and tell stories on as grand of a scale as Sonic Adventure 2, with Shadow the Hedgehog actually being a pseudo-sequel to Sonic Adventure 2, expanding more on Shadow's backstory. And then on the other hand, you have much more lighthearted games like the Advanced series, Heroes, Rush, Riders, and Rivals. These games all take a step back in the stakes, reverting sort of back to the Genesis era where Eggman was just simply causing trouble and the heroes had to defeat him. Except with the case of Sonic Heroes, which does have a bit of a plot twist, being that, spoilers if you haven't played Sonic Heroes and you plan on playing it, Metal Sonic was actually the villain all along and Dr. Eggman was being held captive. Now, not wanting to dwell on this era for too long, and because I've already spoken about Sonic 06 in another video, which will be in the timestamp, time card, whatever that thing is called in the top right, we're going to skip ahead a few years to the Sonic Storybook series, this being Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic and the Black Knight. Both of these games show Sonic being isekai'd into a new world and influencing the world around him throughout his adventures. Sonic and the Black Knight specifically has great character moments from Sonic, like his lack of allegiance to any knightly principles, willingness to be the bad guy, even while doing the morally right thing, stopping Gawain from ending his own bloodline, and of course the all worlds have their end speech to Merlina at the end of the game. It all culminates in a great story for what is essentially Temple Run with a sword. I'm just reading the script right now and realized that I did actually skip Sonic Unleashed. I'll make a separate video about Sonic Unleashed later, my bad. We finally start the 2010s era with Sonic Colors. Sonic Colors is what many people deem to be the start of the meta era, where Sonic was more self-referential and, I don't know, kinda cringe. But that aside, Sonic Colors does act as a soft reboot for the series, bringing back the environmentalist themes with industry versus nature showing up as the theme parks taking over the many planets. There's even more of a focus on environmental storytelling once again, with Planet Wisp being a great example of it. The start of the level has you in lush, great grassy fields, while as you further enter the level, it becomes more industrial, showing Eggman's influence over the area and all the factories and egg ponds and stuff, you know? Sonic Colors, however, as I mentioned earlier, does not take itself seriously at all, so its story has little to no stakes, besides of course the Wisp being like held captive. We are going to skip Sonic Generations because it has little to no plot and no original levels. Anything that I've said relating to environmental storytelling about games that were previously included into Sonic Generations still applies here, I guess. We are also going to skip Sonic Lost World because its story is in the same vein as Sonic Colors, not taking itself too seriously, and the level themes aren't like there's no environmentalism, it's just generic. Now we make it to 2017 with Sonic Forces. Sonic Forces did try to have a decent story, but the stakes were all over the place. Yes, the world was war-torn, yes, everyone is in danger, yes, Sonic is in prison, but the moment he gets out of his space prison, the war is over within about a week. Either Sonic is super overpowered, or the exact details of the story were an afterthought. Now we finally get to the latest mainline game, Sonic Frontiers. This game has some good storytelling, but loses some of the subtleties seen in games prior. As far as I can tell, there's not really any room for environmental storytelling, since all of the construction that you see around the map is only visible to Sonic. What this game does have is world building and explanations for some of the oldest parts of Sonic lore, like the Ancients being the origin of the Chao/Chaos, as well as the Chaos Emeralds. Details like Sonic becoming infected with the cyber virus throughout the game, but still choosing to save his friends first, as well as Sage's increasing understanding of Sonic's personality, are very reminiscent of the old style of storytelling. And despite what Twitter may say, I do believe Ian Flynn is steering the series in the right direction. Now that we've briefly glossed over every game in the series, with a few exceptions of course, what can we discern about Sonic himself throughout all these stories? Is Sonic a force of nature? Is Sonic a hero? Is Sonic something to be reckoned with? Is Sonic a fairy? Is Sonic the wind? Is Sonic electricity? Is Sonic speed? Well, the answer to all those questions is yes. Sonic is all of those things, because Sonic embodies the one quality that all of those things have in common, and that is freedom. Sonic stands up for the little guy. Sonic fights for whoever can't fight for themselves. Sonic embodies selflessness and doing what's right just because you can. Even if the world is against you, you still need to do what you believe is morally right. So what really makes a Sonic story? I'll leave that up to you in the comments. Ha, I'm just playing. What really makes a Sonic story is freedom. That's it. I know, it might seem anticlimactic after the 15-ish minutes that we just went going over this, but freedom is what makes a Sonic story. I would love to see your discussions in the comments below. Until next time, peace.